All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is George Agbeovi. I'm the moderator of this event. I'm the representative of Remind on the Basic Energy Sciences Early Career Network. I would like to welcome each and every one of you to the funding opportunities at the Department of Energy Office of Science for Early Career Scientists webinar. I would like to remind each and every one of you that this particular webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the Office of Science website, and the link to that website has been posted in the Zoom chat. Also, the presentation will also be posted on this particular website as well. There will be a question and answer section after the presentation. Please use the Q&A box in the Zoom to ask your question. So today, we've assembled two amazing speakers to enlighten us on this particular topic. And I would like to use this time to introduce these amazing speakers to all of you. The first of them is Dr. Andrew Swartz. I hope I got the name correct. He's currently the director of the Materials Sciences and Engineering Division in the Department of Energy Office of Science, Office of Basic Energy Sciences. In addition to the program management duties, he also serves on the advisory committee for the DOE Office of Science Early Career Research Program. Prior to joining the Basic Energy Sciences, he spent several years in industry leading a multidisciplinary scientific and engineering team in the research and development of new technologies. He was also the experimental condensed matter physics program manager and Energy Frontier Research Center team lead prior to becoming the division director. Our second speaker is Dr. Gail McLean. She is currently the acting director of Chemical Sciences, Geosciences, and Biosciences Division, and the team lead for the photochemistry and biochemistry team in the DOE Office of Science, Office of Basic Energy Sciences. Prior to joining the DOE, Dr. McLean was a national program leader for plant biology in the competitive programs unit of the Cooperative State Research, Education and Extension Service. She also directed and provided leadership for several competitive grant programs while at USDA. Please, let's welcome our speakers. And with that, we'd like to start with today's webinar. Please, our speakers, take it over to you.
Thank you, George. Both Andy and I are very happy to have this opportunity to talk to you and the attendees at this Early Career Network event. And as you've mentioned, the Basic Energy Sciences is a program area in DOE's Office of Science, and we wanted to give you a quick overview of the Office of Science. This slide shows you information from fiscal year 2022, when the enacted budget was almost $7.5 billion. The budget currently for fiscal year 2023 is $8.1 billion. But the Office of Science is the largest supporter of physical sciences in the United States. We support nearly 28,000 researchers and nearly 36,000 users of our scientific user facilities in fiscal year 2022. Research funding was around $3 billion in 2022. That was about 40% of the budget. The remainder of the funding went for facilities operations and facilities upgrades and construction. And about 30% of our research is supported at universities. So as I mentioned, Basic Energy Sciences is one of many program offices in the Office of Science research portfolio, which are listed here. In Basic Energy Sciences, our mission is to understand, predict, and ultimately control matter and energy flow at electronic, atomic, and molecular levels. Within the research that we support is fundamental science to understand materials and chemical processes. This is supported through more than 1,500 active research awards, and program managers in Basic Energy Sciences overall may review more than 1,500 applications within a single year, with about 500 of those proposals being new and renewal awards each year. This knowledge that results from this research in materials and chemical sciences can help lead to knowledge for improving materials and chemical processes relevant to a broad range of energy technologies and clean energy. BES is also making efforts to expand funding to institutions that are currently underrepresented in our portfolio. And we are the home of the DOE established program to stimulate competitive research, also known as EPSCoR. In addition to our research funding, we also are responsible for operating 12 national user facilities that hosted over 15,000 users from many disciplines that cross the Office of Science. And we also manage 11 facility construction projects. Excuse me. The Office of Basic Energy Sciences is currently has 3 divisions. This slide shows that there are 4 divisions. We are undergoing a realignment, and the Collaborative Research Division is a brand new addition to our organization. But for the present moment, we have the Materials Sciences and Engineering Division, and the Chemical Sciences, Geosciences, and Biosciences Division are the home of the research that we support. And we have a separate Scientific User Facilities Division. Also up in the corner of this slide, just to show you that in 2023, the budget for Basic Energy Sciences is about $2.5 billion. Research funding is at 44% of that budget, and the remainder is facility operations and facility projects. When you contact BES, or when you look at the people within BES, you're going to see a range of different scientific disciplines represented. These include physicists, chemists, material scientists, geoscientists, biologists, as well as engineers. So we're a highly multidisciplinary group. Within the Chemical Sciences, Geosciences, and Biosciences Division, we have 3 teams. The Fundamental Interaction Teams, which looks at how to control chemical reactivity and dynamics in gas and condensed phases and at interfaces. The Photochemistry and Biochemistry Team aims to understand molecular mechanisms of light energy capture and how that is converted into chemical and electrical energy. And the Chemical Transformation Team looks at a number of different processes related to chemical transformations, including catalysis, synthesis, separation, stabilization, and transport processes, going from atomic all the way up to geologic scales. This is just, again, a quick overview of what the CSGB division looks like with the 3 teams here. And within each team, you will see core programs. So within Fundamental Interactions, there are 5 core programs. Within the Photochemistry and Biochemistry teams, there are 3 core programs, plus the Fuels from Sunlight Energy Innovation Hub. And within the Chemical Transformation team, there are 4 core programs. The Materials Sciences and Engineering Division, like CSGB, also has 3 teams. Scattering and Instrumentation Sciences investigates photon, neutron, and electron interactions with matter to gain a better understanding of structure, dynamics, and functionality. Condensed Matter and Materials Physics explores phenomena in condensed matter, such as quantum behavior and response to environmental stimulus. And the Materials Discovery, Design, and Synthesis teams focuses on a fundamental understanding of synthesis processes and materials dynamics to help us get the knowledge we need to design new materials via innovative physical, chemical, and biomolecular routes. And again, just to show you, within the 3 teams, there are a number of core programs. Within Materials Discovery, Design, and Synthesis, there are 3 core programs as well as a hub on batteries and energy storage. Within Condensed Matter and Materials Physics, there are 5 core programs. And within Scattering and Instrumentation Sciences, there are 3 core programs plus the F-score program. Within BES, we have a range of different funding modalities, from single PI to large team and center efforts. The core research programs typically fund single investigators and small groups for 3-year awards. This is very fundamental research that crosses all of our core research activities. And we use what's called the annual open FOA. You'll learn more about that from Andy in a few minutes. Our core research programs also include the Office of Science Early Career Research Program Awards. These are 5-year awards. Proposals are solicited through a different separate annual funding opportunity announcement. And we also support awards in our core programs that have been made under topical FOAs that are based on or determined by DOE priorities. So the core program has a mix of different types of awards. As many of you are familiar with our Energy Frontier Research Centers, which are 4-year awards, larger than our core research programs. They are $2 to $4 million per year award. Again, this is very fundamental research that is addressing basic research needs workshop reports. The EFRC awards are recompeted, and the next competition is in FY 2024. We have a new type of research center called an Energy Earthshot Research Center this year, which is looking at fundamental science underlying energy earthshot goals. Our computational materials and chemical sciences programs, similar to the Energy Frontier Research Centers, are $2 to $4 million per year research centers, again for 4 years. These focus on open source validated software for materials and chemistry. The energy storage and fuels from sunlight hubs, 1 in each of our research divisions, are again larger than the EFRCs and the computational materials and chemical sciences. These are $8 to $25 million per year for 5-year awards. This effort was launched in 2010, and it's a DOE-wide effort, so it's not solely BES. You will find hubs in other parts of DOE. The hubs address research topics that have proven very challenging for traditional funding approaches and for which success could be transformative. So they're really addressing critical barriers for technology, such as making fuels from sunlight or improving our energy storage technologies. And then finally, we wanted to mention the National QIS, Quantum Information Science Research Centers. These span across the Office of Science. There are 5 awards. They were established in 2020 at $25 million per year per award, and BES relevant science is included in these centers. So moving on to funding opportunities, and Andy, this is your section.
Thank you, Gail, for that introduction. So yes, the next section, we're going to dive into some of the details of funding opportunity announcement, or FOAs. This is the term that the Department of Energy uses for solicitations, how we solicit proposals, how we evaluate those proposals, and how we then, and I'll give you a little bit of insight into what we do once an award has been made in terms of oversight. So what's shown here is the homepage for BES funding opportunities. There is a link at the bottom, and has been noted in the chat, the recording of this webinar, as well as the slides, will be posted to the energyfrontier.us website. So all of the links here will be available once that posting goes live. If you go to the next slide, and all of the funding opportunity announcements show up on this page, including old ones that are already closed. So if you're interested in seeing sort of what they look like, there's plenty of closed funding opportunity announcements from recent years that you can look at. So as Gail mentioned, many of our proposals for the core programs that she spoke about on that prior slide come in through what we generically call the open call or the open FOA. It has a very complicated name, the Continuation of Solicitation for Office of Science Financial Assistance Program, which is a mouthful, and so we generally call it the open call. It is annually issued, it is broad, it is open, and it is open throughout the year. There's no submission deadline. We accept proposals into this funding opportunity announcement on a rolling basis. It's available only to university applicants, not to DOE National Lab applicants, however. And it also covers the whole Office of Science. So it has a section for BES, but also for all of the other programs that Gail showed on the earlier slides. Within BES, it includes brief descriptions of all the 22 core research areas. Those are the areas that Gail showed on the two divisional organizational charts a few slides earlier, and as well as descriptions of the current priorities and areas of research interest for those programs, and contact information for the program managers, which is encouraged. We strongly encourage you, and I'll come back to this in a moment, to reach out to program managers to discuss your research ideas. In addition, the open call identifies some overarching research priorities that are relevant to multiple core research areas, including clean energy science, critical minerals and materials, fundamental science for manufacturing, AI, ML, and quantum information sciences. Next slide, Gail. So a couple tips here, and I've said some of this already. If you want to submit a proposal into the BES open call, as I said, it's continuous. It's an open process. There are no fixed deadlines. It is reissued each year, so it will say that it closes on September 30th, which is the end of a given fiscal year. But a new FOA will be issued on or around October 1st for the next fiscal year. There is a budget cycle that goes on top of that, so we do encourage you again to have a conversation with the program managers about when is the optimal time to submit relative to the given budget cycle. Reviews typically take 4 to 6 months to complete, and awards are based on the strength of the proposal, particularly the strength of the merit review and available resources within our budgets. All proposals do go through peer review, and particularly for the open call, we encourage you to contact the program manager, preferably by email as the initial contact, to discuss your research ideas. Most program managers will ask you to then submit a white paper or pre-proposal with a brief description of your research ideas. This is strongly encouraged. It allows you to get some feedback from the program manager about your research before you go through the process of writing and submitting a full proposal. It's not a required step for the open call. Some of the topical FOAs that Gail mentioned earlier do require a pre-proposal submission. Funding levels do vary. We have lots of flexibility within the core programs to the funding, but in general, the funding levels are based on the work to be done, the scope of the work to be done, as well as the peer review, which is asked to assess the budget request. A typical award to a university researcher supports up to 1 month of summer salary, plus for the PI, plus support for students, postdocs, materials and supplies, some travel funds, et cetera. But that again is quite variable depending on the scope of the work, and we are able and do make some multi-PI team awards through the open call, so it's not limited to single investigators, though the vast majority of the awards through the open call are to single investigators. Next slide, Gail. So in addition, there are a number of other BES funding opportunities that are issued throughout the year, topically and otherwise. So what's shown here is some examples from this current fiscal year. All of these are actually closed. We're well into the fiscal year now. So really what this is intended to give you an idea of the scope and keep your eyes open for future years. Probably most interest to this group is the annual early career funding opportunity announcement, which Gail mentioned, and I'm going to show some more details of that on a subsequent slide. In addition, we have some new activities that were initiated in recent years. The Accelerate FOA, or Accelerate, was a call targeted at DOE National Labs to accelerate the transition of basic science toward applied research and technology development. Two new programs after that within the Office of Science, the FAIR program and the RENEW program, are both intended to broaden the scope of the institutions that are taking part in our funding programs. So both FAIR and RENEW are targeting minority serving institutions, and particularly non-R1 minority serving institutions. The FAIR program also is targeted toward emerging research institutions, those institutions that have historically been underrepresented within our portfolio and have received significantly lower funding levels from the federal government. RENEW is an acronym that stands for Reaching a New Energy Workforce, and is really focused on providing internship and training opportunities for early career researchers, particularly students and postdocs at the DOE National Labs. FAIR is an acronym for Funding for Accelerated Inclusive Research, which is really intended to build research capacity, again, at these non-R1 MSIs and emerging research institutions. BES is also the home for the DOE-wide EPSCoR program. EPSCoR is a government-wide program which provides funding to U.S. states and territories that have not historically had large federally supported academic research programs. The list of states that are eligible is maintained by the National Science Foundation. DOE adopts that list. And we issue an annual FOA for the EPSCoR program, which again is managed by Basic Energy Sciences, but competed across the Department of Energy. And then, as Gail mentioned, we have some new efforts this year, the Energy Earthshot Research Centers, and a funding opportunity announcement for cross-cutting science foundations in support of the energy Earthshots. I won't go into those details. If you could go to the next slide, Gail, we'll focus here on the Early Career Research Program. So this is a program that is now, I've lost track, 12 or 13 years old now within the Office of Science, intended specifically to support early career researchers, both at universities and at the DOE National Labs. So this supports individual research programs for those people who are currently within 12 years of their PhD. The program historically was, the eligibility requirement of the program historically was 10 years after PhD. That was extended to 12 years this year and will be continued next year to account for career delays as a result of the COVID, though we anticipate that after next year, it will likely return to a 10-year window. Applicants must be, at the universities, must be untenured but tenure track in tenure track position, and DOE laboratory scientists are also eligible to apply, again, within these eligibility rules. There is a limit to the number of times an applicant may apply. It's up to 3 applications. The funding levels are set across the Office of Science, currently $175K per year for 5 years for the university PIs, and $500,000 per year for 5 years for the DOE National Lab PIs. The budgets are different because the National Lab funding structure is different than the academic funding structure, particularly the fact that National Lab researchers do not have a 9-month academic salary. Again, this funding opportunity announcement is being competed right now. The deadlines have passed for this fiscal year, but the awards, the FOA is typically issued in the fall, with awards starting in the late summer. And there's some statistics on the lower right. Within Basic Energy Sciences, we are typically making between 30 and 40 awards per year. And some statistics on the lower left about the current distribution of awards over the last 5 years, the active awards. Next slide, Gail. Office of Science also runs a graduate student research program, which provides supplemental research awards for grad students to spend anywhere from 3 to 12 months at a DOE national laboratory conducting their dissertation research in collaboration with a staff member at the DOE National Lab. There is a process by which one can apply, and if you note at the bottom, there are 2 solicitations per year. The current solicitation application deadline is coming up. It's next week, which I realize is quite soon. But there are, again, there are typically 2 solicitation windows, application windows per year. The award provides a stipend for the living expenses to allow for the time spent at the DOE National Lab, as well as travel costs. It is only open to U.S. citizens or permanent residents, who are enrolled in a graduate program at a university in the US. And you do have to establish a collaboration with the DOE National Laboratory Scientists when you apply. So the next part of the application is identifying that collaborative effort. Next slide, Gil. Okay, now I'm going to move into a series of slides just to give you some of our thoughts about, how to write a grant proposal, how to write, what it takes and what makes a good proposal. This is not meant to be comprehensive. We tried to do our best to kind of hit the high points here. I won't read everything that's on each of these slides. Again, they'll be available posted onto the website. And there's no one right way to write a proposal, but these are some of the things, having seen many proposals, that we like to encourage applicants, particularly early career applicants, to consider when they're starting it. So first and foremost, read the funding opportunity announcement. They are not the simplest documents to read. They are quite detailed. There's lots of technical information in those about the science that we are soliciting in any funding opportunity announcement, as well as lots of information about eligibility, due dates, et cetera. And all of those things are important. So make sure you do read carefully whichever funding opportunity announcement that you are applying to. Consider the program descriptions and the priorities in the area, the relevance of your research to the program in the DOE. Look carefully at whether a pre-application or letter of intent is required. As I said, it is not for the open call, but some of the other FOAs that we issue, it is required. And in the end, we strongly encourage you to propose hypothesis-driven fundamental science. This is a basic science organization. Despite the fact that we sit within the Department of Energy, we are not funding energy technology research. We're funding the foundational research that underlies future energy technology. So make sure that your efforts are focused, if you want to apply to BES, on fundamental science. You can also look at what's in the program already. The abstracts of funded research are available on the public DOE website. If you go to our website and search for the abstracts, you can find all of the active abstracts. As well, most of all of the programs with BES hold annual or biannual meetings of the PIs, and the abstracts from those meetings are also posted onto our website. It's a great way to see not only who is funded in the programs, but what science is funded in the programs, and figure out where you fit. Lastly, I'd encourage you, if you're interested, is to volunteer to review proposals. A great way to learn about how to write a good proposal is to read proposals. And one way to read proposals is to be a reviewer. You'll see good ones, you'll see less good ones, and you'll learn from that process. Next. Okay, general grant writing tips. Again, let me hit the high points here in the interest of time, because we do want to allow time for Q&A. So first of all, plan ahead. This does take a long time to write a proposal, and particularly to write a good proposal. Keep the review criteria in mind. The funding opportunity announcement will always list for you the criteria that will be used to review the proposal. And those are the criteria that the reviewers, our peer reviewers, will be asked to comment on. So you should keep those in mind and think about making sure that you have answered the mail, and that's in the sense of those review criteria. Make it as easy as possible for the reviewers to find the key points within your proposal, to find the points they're going to need in order to make an assessment of those review criteria. So ensure that they're clearly articulated and obvious, and not, the key points are not buried somewhere within the proposal. We also strongly encourage you to reach out to colleagues and mentors during the process for feedback. People who've been through the process before, whether that's people you've worked for in the past, whether that's other people at your institution who have more experience writing proposals. The more feedback you can get during the writing process, the stronger your proposal is likely to be. Moving down to the bottom, check grammar, spelling, formatting, completeness, and then check it again. The details matter, and it's important to get it right. So make sure that you have all of that you've checked all of that, and that the document is complete, that you have included all of the requirements for the funding opportunity announcement. And of course, you can reach out to whoever is listed in the funding opportunity announcement, whichever technical content, if you have questions. Next slide. Okay, I've said some of this before, but we've put together sort of a bullet list of characteristics of successful proposals. Easy to read and well organized. This is really important. As good as your ideas are, if you put them on paper in a way that is difficult for someone to understand, it's unlikely to get a strong review. So make sure that it's well written, easy to read, organized, help the reviewers out, make it easy for them to see what you're trying to do and to understand the impact of it. Objectives and rationale should fit within the program and convince the reviewers of the need for the research. A realistic research plan in terms of the time frame, the personnel, the budget. In other words, setting stretch goals is okay, but being overly ambitious and unrealistic is not necessarily going to be a strength. Literature review is important. Acknowledge what's been done. Reference the relevant literature, and most importantly, as I said, the relevant literature. Long extended reference lists are not as impactful as really targeted references that show exactly what research that's been done are you basing your proposal on. Whether it's your research or others in the field, that's important. Communication of the importance and the potential impact of the work. You're going to tell the reviewers what you're planning to do. This is really why. Why do you want to do this? What will you learn, and why is this important? To the extent it exists, preliminary data can strengthen a proposal for sure. It's not a requirement. Obviously, people starting out their career don't necessarily have a huge amount of preliminary work, but looking at what's in the literature and what work you've done, and basing your proposed research off of that is critical. Detailed research plan is important, but be careful not to get too detailed. If you get lost in the details, you may lose the big picture. So there's a balance here between getting enough detail that we and the reviewers can assess what you're planning to do, and not overwhelming with detail. This is where your colleagues and other mentors can help to read and provide feedback. And then build the right research team with the appropriate expertise, whether it's you and your students and postdocs, collaborative expertise, et cetera. Make sure that you have the right people with the right expertise to do what you propose to do. Next slide. I just wanted to make a mention here as well that we are always trying to expand our programs and to broaden participation in the programs. This is important to us. It's also a priority at the highest levels within the Department of Energy currently. And so we're always encouraging proposals from new institutions, especially institutions that don't have awards currently from us, minority serving institutions, even predominantly undergraduate institutions, not always thought of as research institutions, but there is at many of these institutions research going on that we can and would like to support. New investigators, here's where the early career people come in. We are always looking to sort of revitalize and reinvigorate the portfolio of people that we support, and particularly those from populations that are underrepresented in our portfolio. So the program managers, as I've mentioned a couple times, are available. Their contact information is on the website, and reaching out to them in the areas in which you're doing research can be really valuable. Next slide. Okay. We wanted to give you a little idea of what happens after an award is made and how we manage or provide oversight of those awards. A number of mechanisms are used. There is a formal requirement for annual reporting. So annual reports are submitted by the awardees, typically 3 months prior to the end of each budget period. The PIs are also asked to submit research highlights of their most impactful work. The program managers collect those highlights, and they're a great way to tell the story of the impact of the research that we've funded. As I mentioned earlier, the programs hold these either annual or biannual principal investigator meetings. And the larger efforts, things like the Energy Frontier Research Centers and the hubs, include additional management reviews, midterm reviews, as well as site visits, and sometimes annual on-site reviews. Most BES awards are eligible to submit renewal proposals. The one exception is the early career program. The early career awards are single cycle 5-year awards. That award itself is not renewable, but the PIs may submit a new proposal to the core program to continue the research started with an early career award. Discussions with the program managers is encouraged. I've said this many times. And there is an opportunity to submit what's called a no-cost extension if the results during the initial period have been slowed, our productivity is low, or the full budget has not been spent. There's a way to extend a current award for additional time to complete the work. Next slide, Gail. Okay, I think I'd only have a couple more before I turn it back to Gail to wrap it up here. I did want to point out 2 new requirements that started just this current fiscal year across the Office of Science. One is that all proposals submitted to us now must have a plan called a Promoting Inclusive and Equitable Research Plan, or a peer plan. And there's more details available on what that includes, but this is now also included as part of our merit review process. So we've added another merit review criteria, again, laid out in the funding opportunity announcement. The quality and efficacy of the peer plan is one of the things we do review. In addition, for proposals to support conferences, which we do support, we do provide monetary support for conferences. Every conference organizer must have a available and established code of conduct policy and a recruitment and accessibility plan for students and speakers and attendees. Next slide, which I think shows you where on our website you can find more information about both of these, both the peer plan and the conference proposals. There's additional information and resources available on the website for how to put these together. Next slide, Gil. Finally, I want to say one thing about data management. For the last number of years across the federal government, and certainly within our programs, we've required a data management plan. This is based on the data management principles of discovery, preservation, validation, and cost management of data. Obviously, the data that results from the research we fund is incredibly valuable, and making that data accessible to others within the community to drive forward the science is important. So data management plans are required in all proposals, and are evaluated again as part of the merit review process. So just point that out. Again, much more detail available on the web links at the bottom on how to put together and how we evaluate data management plans. Next slide. All right, I think I get to turn it back to Gail right now for the last few slides, and then we'll open it up to questions. As has been noted, and I see people have been doing so, the Q&A window in Zoom is open, and you're welcome to enter your questions there, and we'll try to get to as many as we can during the discussion. Gail?
Okay, so to close out here, just where can you find more information? We encourage you to look at the BES website, in particular, our research division web pages for chem sciences, geosciences, and biosciences, and material sciences and engineering. You can find there more detailed descriptions of our core research areas, the individual core research areas or funding programs. You can find the abstract books from our principal investigator meetings, and you can find out the contact information for the program manager. So we encourage you to take advantage of those web pages. We also encourage you to look at the basic research needs strategic planning workshop and roundtable reports. These are found in the community resources section of our webpage. And these reports and workshops are an important part of our strategic planning. And these reports will show you how we identify the science and research priorities that we are considering. These workshops bring together members of the scientific community, and this is just an example of a recent workshop on foundational science for carbon dioxide removal technologies. This one was held in March of 2022 with co-chairs Jim DiOrio from PNNL and Krista Walton from the Georgia Institute of Technology. It was organized by BES in coordination with other offices in DOE, including energy efficiency and renewable energy, fossil energy and carbon management, and the Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy, or ARPA-E. And this workshop brought together members of the scientific community to discuss some of the fundamental science challenges remaining to be addressed for carbon dioxide removal technologies. As a result of this workshop, 5 priority research opportunities were identified, and these help us in our strategic planning for our core programs as well as for other topical FOAs. Another great place to get information about BES is our Basic Energy Sciences Advisory Committee, or BSAC webpage. You can find information about the meetings. These are public meetings. You are welcome to attend. And the meeting website also gives you the presentations from prior meetings, which can be very useful. You can find out information about overviews of BES as well as very specific activities that are relevant to BSAC. We had a meeting just this week, I think it was, and the next meeting will be held in July. And we encourage you to stay connected. To get Office of Science news by email or text, You can go to this website, science.osti.gov, and sign up for your topics of interest, FOAs, press releases, science or program news. It's just a great way to stay informed and get the news hot off the presses, as it were. And other than, I wanted to add one thing, which I think Andy has said a few times, but I will echo that. Always feel free to contact the program manager. We are here to help you and to answer your questions. And if it turns out that your research isn't appropriate for the program that we manage, we will try to help point you in a more appropriate direction. So always feel free to contact the program manager. We want to hear from you. And so thank you again for your attention, and we'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Andy and Gail, for this wonderful presentation. I don't know about the rest, but I've learned a lot from these particular presentations. I have few questions, and some of them to have been posted by the attendees. One of such questions is about the reviewing of proposals. How do volunteers go about application in order to review such proposals? Is there a way to go about it?
So if you would like to be a reviewer, the best way to go about it is to put yourself in contact with the program managers in the topical area in which you have expertise. We don't have a formal process yet. There may be one implemented, but we don't have a formal process yet for you to put your name onto a list. But the program managers are always looking for new people with expertise in the topical areas that they support. So really it's about identifying, and it's also a great way for you therefore to introduce yourself to those program managers.
Thank you. I also have another question, and it goes like this. How many early career proposals do DOE usually get in a calendar year, and what is the success rate?
I guess I can take that one. I don't have the exact numbers, and we don't typically publish the exact success rate, but we get, okay, I'll give you the BES numbers, early careers across the whole Office of Science. But the basic energy sciences typically gets a few hundred proposals per year. As I noted on that slide, we typically, and in recent years, we've been typically making between 30 and 40 awards per year. So you can calculate a rough success rate from that. I will also point out, however, that in recent years, we have implemented a pre-proposal requirement within BES. And for some of the programs that receive a large number of applicants, that varies by program, we have been implementing a process by which the pre-proposals get evaluated and only a subset get encouraged to submit applications to that current FOA. So you need to submit a pre-proposal for early career. Everybody who's interested does. And we do an evaluation process that allows us to manage the number of full proposals and try to ensure that those that are most likely or have the highest likelihood of success are evaluated as full proposals. As I mentioned, there's a limit of 3 submissions, but that's only for the full proposal. So if you submit a pre-proposal that's not encouraged in that given year, it does not count as one of your 3 submissions.
Thank you. I also have another question. It's about the subscription for announcement of funding opportunities. People were asking how they could subscribe, if there is any, to get announcement on funding opportunities.
So I would suggest that they go sign up for the announcements on I think it was the last slide, or the Contact Us page, where you can sign up for announcement about funding opportunities or program news. You can also learn about things by going to the BSAC meeting or looking at the BSAC meeting website and seeing the presentations from the BES overviews. But I think probably the most expedient approach is to use Contact Us, which will give you information on when FOAs are released.
Thank you. I also have another question, and that is, what are the eligibility requirements for core research?
For collaborative
For
research?
core research.
Core research.
Oh, sorry.
So the detailed eligibility requirements, of course, are listed in the funding opportunity. And so I don't know exactly what eligibility the questioner was asking about, but it's pretty open. There's you know, as I said, the open call, which is how we fund most of the core research, is open to all universities, also to industry, actually, as well as nonprofit research organization. It is not open to DOE National Labs. I know there have been a couple of questions in the Q&A about that. So DOE National Lab researchers are not eligible to apply to the open call. That's maybe the primary eligibility restriction of the open call. Otherwise, it is open. I should point out as well that technically the institution is eligible to apply. So it's the institution is submitting the application, the proposal, on behalf of the individuals as the PI and other individuals on it. So it's really more about the institutional eligibility than about the individuals.
So I want to echo Andy's point there. That's something that can be sometimes a challenge, because the award, while you're thinking, okay, the award is made to Dr. X, it's not, he or she does not own that award. It's the institution. So the award is made to the institution, with that professor being the lead for the research, because they have the appropriate expertise, resources, capabilities. But the award is not made to the individual. It's made to the institution. Now, I know there are some other, or there used to be, I haven't kept up with this, but there used to be some funding opportunities at other agencies where you could apply as an individual, and the award was made to the individual. But for us, the award is made to the institution.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. One of those is, do early career funding opportunities within DOE have restrictions on nationality?
No.
Okay.
So I think there was this related question as well about whether they're restricted to U.S. citizens and permanent residents, and the answer is also no. So if you are employed at an institution that is eligible to apply for the funding opportunity announcement, then you can be named as an investigator on that. Again, it's the institution that is applying. So the individual's citizenship or status is not eligibility criteria. I did mention on the graduate student research program, which is an award to an individual. That's an exception to what we just said. There, the graduate student is applying as an individual. That program is limited to U.S. citizens and permanent residents. But as a PI on our other programs, typically there is no citizenship requirements.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. Someone asked a question about maternity leave. I'm trying to go through.
I don't know what the question is, but I'll make one comment in relation to that. This has come up in recent years, a question about the early career program and the 10-year or now 12-year eligibility window, and what about an individual who took some time off during that window from research for various reasons. Maternity leave could be one of them. Is there a possibility for an extension of that eligibility window? And the answer is yes. The details are in the funding opportunity announcement about how you would request for an extension of the eligibility since PhD for a break in your research career for maternity leave, for example, for an extended illness, for example. There's some, and it has to be approved by DOE, but there's a mechanism to request the extension.
I think exactly that is what the person was trying to ask. I also have a couple more. For early career proposals, is it recommended or preferred to build collaborative connections with DOE labs and facilities in the proposal?
Gail, do you want that one?
I'm sorry, I was reading the other questions. I'm
So you're right, I missed the beginning of it. So you said, is it preferable to or encouraged to?
Is it recommended or preferred to build collaborative connections with DOE labs and facilities?
Yeah, so this is coming from somebody at a university. It's certainly not required, and really it's driven by the science. If you can't provide funding. So an early career award is one of the restrictions is that it is a single PI award. You can't have co-PIs on an early career award. So, but you can have collaborators that are, not funded through that award. And if those are at a lab, and because that's where it makes most sense, given what the science you're proposing, then that's totally acceptable. But really, it's about building the best team, not regardless of where the best group of collaborators. It's not a team award, regardless of what institution they're at.
Right. For early career, it's Andy described some of the other FOAs where you had to partner with the DOE lab. Early career does not have that kind of requirement.
Right.
Okay. And also, can postdocs also apply for an open call proposals?
So this is a little bit of a tricky one. We get this question sometimes. I think the answer technically is yes, if your institution is going to apply with you listed as the researcher, because again, the open call, it's the institution that applies, not the individual. So the reality is that most academic institutions, most universities apply with a faculty member as the principal investigator. Postdocs may be involved in the research team, but it's very uncommon that a postdoc is listed as the principal investigator on a university proposal.
It can also be challenging in that as the PI on the proposal, you have to say, I have this equipment, I have this space, I have these resources. As a postdoc, your ability to say, this is my lab space is fairly limited because your lab space is within somebody else's lab space. So we do get this question. Sometimes I think it's just harder for a postdoc simply because your proposal is evaluated on the same footing as from a faculty member. So there are some challenges associated with that.
Is it sensible to apply for both an early career award and general core funding at the same time?
So I'll start and then Andy can finish. So we generally advise folks to focus on one or the other. It's writing a good proposal is very difficult, and writing one good proposal is hard enough. Trying to write two good proposals and submitting at the same time is hard to do. I'm not going to say it can't be done. There's no rule preventing you from doing that, but you want to put forward the best proposal you can create, and splitting your time between the core program and the early career program makes it a challenge to write an outstanding proposal in the time that you have. Andy?
Yeah, no, I would agree. That's good advice. I mean, technically the answer is you are allowed to. There's nothing in the FOA that says you're not allowed to, but I think Gail's advice is very good.
I have 5 minutes more, so I'm going to take either one or two questions. Can scientists in DOE lab that is an adjunct professor apply for an open call award?
So they would have an adjunct position at a university, but their primary positions at a DOE lab. I will say that we have had folks do that in the past. It's a bit of a challenge for them, but we have had people apply that way.
I think I'll take the last one. how do underrepresented states identified, and is it a criteria for all FOAs?
Underrepresented states is what you said?
Yes.
Well, okay, so the place where the states come in is primarily through the EPSCoR program. So EPSCoR is a program that's established across the federal government for many years now. It's called actually the Established Program to Stimulate Competitive Research. And the eligibility, it's open to approximately half of the states and territories based on historical data of federal funding dollars over a 3-year period, the last 3-year period, I think. So again, the Department of Energy has opted to, so NSF does the analysis, and so we use the same list of states. So underrepresented, those states are underrepresented based again on this metric of how the research dollars they have received over the last 3-year period. So that's a very well-established list of underrepresented states. We typically don't look at specifically at underrepresented states, but certainly institutions within our portfolio. And as I said, there is a public database through a system called PAMS, Portfolio Analysis Management System, our PAM system, which is available on our website. You can search abstracts and you can see which institutions are currently funded in the Office of Science portfolio. It gives you an indication of which ones are well represented and which institutions are less well represented.
All right. Is it appropriate to discuss a discouraged pre-proposal for the early career program with a point of contact?
Yes, typically there sometimes are some restrictions on when that discussion can happen. It's often deferred till after the proposals come in, or sometimes even after the awards have been announced. That is typically stated in the funding opportunity announcement, but the applicants are typically allowed to reach out to the technical point of contact, the program manager, to get feedback after the process on their discouraged pre-application. Absolutely.
The last one would be, is it possible to start a funding proposal application before landing a permanent professor position?
Yeah, so this goes back to the fact that it is the institution that is submitting the proposal. So that's a conversation to have with, if you don't have a offer of a permanent position, no, I think the answer is it's not really possible, because you don't have an institution to submit the proposal on your behalf. We have had examples where somebody's been offered a position, it hasn't yet started, but the institution is willing to start the proposal process even before the start date of the position. So that's the conversation to have with your institution to understand if they're willing to submit on behalf, with you named as the investigator, even if you've not yet started a position.
And I think the early career FAQs used to have a question on that topic, so you can look at those as well to get more feedback. And I would encourage people to take a look at the early career FAQs. There's a lot of great information in there that we also make use of when you ask us questions.
I think that is what time can allow us. Would like to thank Andy and Gail for their time. And I also like to thank all of you for joining us today. Just a reminder, the webinar and the presentation slides will be posted on the link that is posted in the chat section of the Zoom. Thank you all.
Thank you, George. I wanted to thank George and the team, the Early Career Network team that put this together. Thanks very much for doing that. Thanks for everyone who joined and participated. It was a great dialogue, and we're sorry we didn't get to all the questions that were asked.
Yes, and go to the web page, identify the program manager in the area that is relevant to your expertise, and contact that program manager. I saw a couple questions. How do I know who to contact? Check the website. It will have information on who to contact in different topics.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.